Share on channel here or over on Subscribe. Thanks everyone who's donated to the computing live streaming fund. I look at that live streaming and I see people live stream on YouTube and how careful they are around, they talk around topics because YouTube is so censorious these days. And so YouTube is just for pop culture, and you hear people do these live streams, and a guest will go, "Hey, I don't know if we can talk about this." It'll be like some semi-hot topic, but the shifting sand rules of YouTube are so vague and ambiguous, and purposely kept that way, that the host is like, "Oh, let's just skip over that. Let's just go back to Gina Carano and Star Wars." And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it sucks that like real things. It sucks that we don't have free speech on social media, like guaranteed de jure. It sucks that we're not free from political discrimination. It's weird that like that our representatives aren't more concerned about working on that. No more money for Ukraine. Like I feel like there's taxation without representation here. Like, what happened last time? Didn't they lose their freaking minds over some kind of tea tax or something? I feel like I mean, the longer you let things go out of balance, like the harder the pendulum swings back is what it feels like. Anyway, so Afro Hobbit 17, Clown Pilled, and Chad edition. What happened? They made Rings of Power based on Tolkien's just amazing stories, and even Peter Jackson's amazing movies. And most people like those movies quite a bit because it felt like the book is as close as you can come in 3 hours. It's like, give them a break. It wasn't exactly perfect. It's like it would have had to been 6 hours to be exactly perfect. Unfortunately, they made this Rings of Power where they bought the rights to part of the story, and nobody watched it. The problem is with nobody watching a show is that this isn't just this isn't a small show. They I think put about $700 million into a show. That's a big chunk of money. The thing with Amazon is it's not a big chunk of money for Amazon. That's how big Amazon is. They can lose all of it. I mean, they're not going to lose all of it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some people who are into it, but they're going to lose a big chunk of that. There's nothing they can do to turn that around. Like even in season 2 is coming out in 2 years because they were concerned about the recent events over the past 3 years for some reason. I don't know. I gotta admit I was not very concerned about those events over the past 3 years. I just did not take that very. I washed my hands the first month and that was about it. Have not washed my hands since. I'm gonna be like Doug Tenable. Let the germs fight amongst themselves. Only kidding. So they spent $700 million on the show. That the first people tuned into the first episode, and you saw more. Well, I guess I was going to say Blonde Man Bad, but literally in this case, it was Blonde Man Bad. I think the first season, first episode, the first 10 minutes of the show was 3 blonde elves just being cruel, malicious, and stupid trying to sink the girl's boat. And then she gets some lecture on physics or displacement of in different densities, or I don't know, the physics 101 lecture. It's like you could just explain the physics. They have physics in Lord of the Rings. It's like the physics is the same. I don't remember the intro physics for displacement of water sort of thing, but she's talking about like the stone sinks because it's drawn to its dock. And what are you talking? This doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings. Even another thing is like Tolkien is obviously a smart guy, but he's also an experienced guy. He went to war. He's life in the small English village. He got World War One experience. He has a breadth of experience, and a lot of the old writers did, partially because they were involved in various wars, but also because life was different back then. If you look at the writing of anyone 100 years ago, or even just 50 years ago, you see that it was on a higher level. Like people, yes, people were smarter back then. They were more articulate. They knew a little Latin, a little Greek, a little French, a little Spanish. They had, if you read the writings of people from a while ago, and then you look around today, you're like, what happened, man? It's like, oh yeah, we watch TV now. Oh yeah, it's like the pre-TV, like pre-1960s and post-1960s. It seems like the IQ is taking a dip. It's like there's still people who are well versed in like analytical skills and things, but I don't know, like logic, rhetoric, and like a true liberal arts education is gone because you don't have the experience of reading, writing, and talking to people IRL because people are terminally online. They're stuck to cell phones. And then you get that short attention span theater where you go like, okay, yeah, you put down a stack of books. It's like, kids 100 years ago were reading this big stack of books, and then you look at the cell phone and like you realize you don't have the attention span to read books anymore. That's terrifying. That does not bode well. Anyway, so Lord of the Rings. Oh, the thing I was going with is like yeah, writers were smarter back then. They were also more careful. And you look at the writing of Rings of Power, that first show, which a lot of people tuned in to because they thought, oh, Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson and J.R.R. Tolkien, they're going to come back with something that's going to be like that. And you look at the writing and go, this is horrible. This feels like I don't know, some like it was written by someone at the Mary Sue, someone with a very short attention span who is not familiar with the books or is familiar with the books and decides like, we're going to update it, we're going to put all this globalist propaganda in there. You think the customer is going to be on board with that? Well, we're going to generationally brainwash this new customer base. Oh, okay, so it's like propaganda. It's been propaganda the whole time. Yeah, it's always been propaganda. Even in their interviews, they tell you, they pretty much tell you what they're trying to tell you. They don't realize it's like Chuck Schumer is doing this interview the other day, and he's talking about some things I can't mention on YouTube, and it's like they tell you right to your face. They're telling you what's going on, and people just don't want to listen because it's too horrific to comprehend. So even with something as silly as this pop culture interpretation, it's not that silly because it's the destruction of the European story, of the European people. It's like this is for loosely the English people, but also all of Europe. It is their story, and these people, these Amazon people, view it as, oh yes, but it's okay to degrade, humiliate, and dehumanize them, where they wouldn't do it to anyone else. They know they can do it to this one group of people because they won't defend themselves, or at least up until now they haven't really awakened to the need to say like, this is for us. It's not for you. It's okay to reject this and all your Frankfurt School um, um, Bolshevik propaganda. So even in her quote, she's in the interview, she's saying, we're able to recalibrate, break form, reshape, and make history. So she's trying to retell history. Like these stories are already told. The books are the beginning and the end of the story. This is not the story. There are no Afro hobbits and Afro elves in the story. The darker hued, tanned elves or hobbits they're from like the Mediterranean region of Europe. It's still a European story based in European mythology. You can't be all things to all people, otherwise you end up with something that just nobody wants. And it's, oh, it's not politically correct to say that if you want to see yourself, you want to see a European story. Yeah, but you're putting people in a position of finally having to kind of awaken and say, yeah, your political correctness obviously is just a means to control people through fear. You're going to have to turn that off if you want to start moving this window back to the right. So their show's in trouble, and they know that. And even it's not that the money loss is a problem, but it's like this is a piece of globalist propaganda. So for it to fail, um, they can't let it fail. Like they're not just going to cancel the show; they're going to continue the next 4 seasons with a decreasing viewership because they can't admit that this is a failure of globalists. Like it's gonna get good reviews, and they're gonna talk about the positives of it, but no, it's never gonna get a viewership number because like this isn't Lord of the Rings, and the people who are on board with Lord of the Rings want to see Lord of the Rings, not Amazon's reimagining. So if you read this interview with her, this is a bunch of just gobbledygook speaking because she has something in her mind, but she doesn't exactly what she wants to say is like a bridge too far in current year of basically f the people who wrote the story and f the people who want to see the story. That's what she's saying, but she gives this long convoluted answer about like this is the most circular argument ever, where it's she's not saying anything, but you know what she's trying to say is like we need to take old European stories and destroy them and subvert them and corrupt them. It's like, oh, so would you do that to an Indian story or an African story? How dare you? Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. Because they would defend themselves, and most people like this the suicidal altruism of European people. It's like getting them to awaken is a bit of a challenge, but it's also somewhat fun. So they know they have the show that is completely underwater. You want to see the part of the humiliation ritual? Holy shit, man! The show is underwater, and they've got to try to turn things around a little bit. Like how is attacking the fans working out for you? So they said that they fired I don't know, the show directors or something, the people who are kind of controlling the writers. There's nothing you can do. And they say they gave an interview like we're going to return to canon in season 2. they're lying to you. They're just flat out lying. I guess they call it gaslighting, where they lie to your face. They say like literally what's going on isn't going on. You're like, but I saw the show. I mean, I went sailing for it. Solar 123. I saw. I though with odd and left, I do have Amazon because someone gave me a password, but I still went sailing for it. I'm not. Oh, maybe just not to give them numbers. I don't know. I'm so used to it now. They're lying to you. They can't. How do you fix the show? You are. Oh, so in the interview. So are you going to fire all the actors? Oh, what are you talking about? Okay, well, okay, what exactly wasn't canon in the first season, and how? Like, what do you mean? How, can you flesh that out? The interviewer is never going to ask those basic questions because the interviewer would get destroyed on social media, and then they get fired and they get blacklisted, and they'd never do another effing interview ever again. So every interview is just in this stupid NPR voice, like, oh, okay, that's nice. This woman is giving this interview. You can read it about it in the comics. It's just the most ridiculous circular nonsense, just friggin' nonsense. And at no point does the interviewer go, what do you like? So what specifically are you saying? Like, what is your conclusion here? What I'm hearing your argument, and you're talking about pendulum swinging, but how are you going to do things differently in season 2? You fired the showrunners, but I'm guessing you brought in other directors who have the same worldview as the ones you got rid of. These two guys. Like, how specifically are you going to change things in season 2? Well, we're not going to specifically change anything at all in season 2. Okay, so you're outright lying to people in this interview. Yeah, obviously they're outright lying to people. They can't. Okay, in season 2, are you going to fire the characters who are not canon? Lord of the Rings, the books, and the movies that were a pretty close interpretation of the books was European mythology. Are you going to fire the non-European actors and replace them with European actors? Because something tells me I don't see Amazon doing that. Call me crazy. I don't see that happening. Yeah, this is part of the humiliation ritual. Metaphorical blood. Tears have been shed and blood has been spilled metaphorically. What are you talking about? You're making a show. You're not the good guys in this. Like, they have to know, in their mind, they're twisting over backwards to morally justify what they're doing is destroying someone's story, someone's culture. An Englishman wrote this story. One Englishman wrote this story, which really shows you the power of like how they view this Englishman as some kind of, in their mind, an Ubermensch because he created this story. I look at like, okay, so you got Indians, Africans. Oddly enough, you don't have any East Asians, like Far East Asians, like Chinese and further east. Korean, Africa, Southeast Asia. You don't have them in the show, I don't think, but you've got like Indians and Africans. That's your diversity. I don't think you even have any Mexicans. It's just Indian and African. So it's like it's pseudo diversity. It's skin deep diversity, but it's not their story, and you have to kind of justify it in your head, like, oh yeah, but it's okay to destroy these people's story. They don't count. We're going to dehumanize them. But you wouldn't tell an Indian story this way or an African story this way. So in their minds, like they're so on board this Frankfurt School brainwashing because they've been generationally brainwashed. Also, like a lot of actors are useful idiots to think, oh, what we're doing is, it meets the elements of Saul Alinsky is to subvert and destroy this one group because the puppet masters told them that it's okay to do that. And you go, oh, but I mean, have you ever like sat down and like thought about what you're doing? Like why you've been brainwashed to hate this one group of people so deeply? Like, that never is brought to their attention because they're in an echo chamber in Hollywood for sure, but also on social media, and then also with any interviewer. Because pay attention to interviews in the past 8 years. Every interview, you're never getting anyone asking a hard question. Back in the day, it used to be like for a Hollywood interview, they needed access to people, so they were very careful. But nowadays, like, there's no pushback whatsoever. It's just a monologue. Or to be fair, like if the mainstream media is giving these interviews, they're all on the same page. They're all equally woke with this kind of stuff. I mean, seeing this woman on her version of Shadowfax, this is part. Imagine an Indian tale of elephant gods and whatnot, and you put some blonde-haired, blue-eyed Swedish girl on a horse, dressed up in Indian garb, and you look at it like, do you think Amazon would show that? We're gonna tell Shaka Zulu with it, but are you gonna race swap the Shaka Zulu? Oh no, because Africans are important, they matter. Yeah, but Europeans also matter. Oh, no, they don't, because media has told us for the past 70 years that they don't. They've dehumanized and degraded them for 70 years. Yeah, that's where we are now. The thing is, you can't make people watch a show, though in the future you will, because Nina Jankowicz and the Ministry of Truth, like she went away, but the Ministry of Truth didn't go away, and the fact that the government was even had the balls to say we're in America with the Bill of Rights that we're going to have a Ministry of Truth, literally in 1984, Orwellian Ministry of Truth with Nina Jankowicz and her TikToking cover songs. That didn't go away, but so what Amazon and the streaming services and even YouTube and all these other companies are going to do is like they know who you are, they know your viewing history, your downvoting, your upvoting, and what shows you're watching. They're simply going to report that to the Ministry of Truth, and they're probably just going to make that information publicly available, so you get fired, your banks cancel you, and you get doxxed, and you get your life destroyed because you weren't watching the right shows. Sound crazy, right? Tinfoil hat. But that crazy thing I just said, does it sound? 10 years ago, it sounded crazy for sure. It doesn't sound as crazy today, does it? Because Nina Jankowicz and the Ministry of Truth, that all actually happened. CNN threatening to dox somebody if they made a meme making CNN look bad. That actually all happened too. Like all this stuff is actually happening, and it's just a one-way journey. It doesn't stop until we stop it. Anyway, I never know. I never know too much for YouTube. That's why I kind of like to stick to the script, and that's why I fear live streams. I fear live streams. It's got to stick to that pop culture script. But the thing is, I like pop culture because pop culture is actually talking about very, very important issues through the lens of pop culture. They tell you what they're telling you. They're speaking one language, and like the political language is a different language, but this is just another language they're speaking, but they're singing the same song. Let's just keep mixing the different facets of the crystals. Let's just down the rabbit hole and put in all the They Live glasses. It's like I can't stop. It's a touchdown in the fourth inning. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.